I married Andrea 5 years ago after my mom set us up. Sure, she'd be the perfect wife. She was gentle, soft-spoken, and carried a warmth that made everything feel right. After our wedding, Andrea chose to be a homemaker, while I worked as an accountant for a reputable businessman in Culiacan. Life felt comfortable. I provided her with a lovely house in the heart of Colonia Centro, a lifestyle filled with comforts, and the freedom to live her life as she wished. She once spoke about having children, though later she thought we should wait. I agreed. After all, we had all the time in the world. In the beginning, all was tranquil. Andrea kept our home immaculate, cooked meals that warmed the heart, and always greeted me with a smile after a long day at work. She became my sanctuary from the demanding pressures of my job. Yet gradually, I noticed she was spending more time with a group of local women. At first, I convinced myself that every woman needs good company. But as days went by, I saw in these women something unsettling. A crowd of housewives dressed in expensive clothes, bought with their husbands' hard-earned money, and wasting their days in idle chatter, complaints, and excesses that drained the men they were supposed to support. I feared Andrea might lose her sense of gratitude and start thinking she deserved more than what I had provided. One evening, sitting alone at the dining table while undoing my tie after a taxing day, I broached the subject. "Andrea," I began, watching her carefully as she placed a plate of freshly made tortillas on the table. "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time with those ladies on our street." Her eyes, unreadable, met mine as she replied, "Yes, they're nice. It's good to have friends around." I couldn't hide my dismissive tone. "Friends? Andrea, do you even realize what these women really are? They idle away their days, drain their husband's money, and have no respect for the ones who work hard for them." She frowned and crossed her arms. "That isn't true, Diego. They're just women like me. We share our thoughts and our lives. What's the harm in that?" I sighed deeply, massaging my temples. "The harm is that this idle chatter will slowly fill your head with rebellion. What starts off as harmless conversation soon becomes complaints about our life, convincing you that you deserve more." I leaned forward, my voice firm. "I work tirelessly for both of us, Andrea. I provide you with everything you need, and I don't want you caught up with people who won't help you see that." Her lips tightened, and a spark of irritation flashed in her eyes. "I'm not a child, Diego. I choose my own friends." I narrowed my eyes, insisting, "I'm simply asking you to be careful. Stay away from those women. They're not good for you." She shook her head stubbornly. "You don't really know them. They're not the poison you think they are." I exhaled forcefully, frustration pulsing in my chest. "Andrea, I know exactly what I'm talking about. Just listen to me." But that night, my words hung unsaid as Andrea slipped away into a world I no longer recognized. That sultry July evening began like any other. I'd spent the day buried in ledgers and balancing endless accounts. As I drove home, the sunset flaring hues of orange and deep purple overhead, I hoped for a peaceful dinner and perhaps a quiet conversation with Andrea. If she hadn't been distracted by what I suspected was nothing more than petty gossip from her new acquaintances. But the moment I walked inside, an eerie silence greeted me. The lights in the kitchen were off, and the table overlooked an untouched meal. Andrea was never one to leave a meal unfinished, not even leftovers. I called her name, but there was no response. A quick glance at the parking area confirmed her car was still there, meaning she hadn't left on a drive. A chill gripped me as I dialed her phone. One ring, two rings, then straight to voicemail. I tried again, but nothing. As minutes turned to an hour and then two, my worry mixed with anger until finally, the sound of clicking heels on pavement snapped my attention to the door. There she stood, swaying slightly with a lazy smile as if nothing were amiss. She was dressed in an outfit I'd never seen before, a garment that clung to her curves, barely covering enough, with makeup smeared and hair disheveled. The pungent scent of alcohol hung around her, and worse, a hint of cheap cologne that wasn't mine. "Diego," she slurred, her grin wide and unnerving. "Come to bed. I need you to sleep." I looked at her, every muscle tensed, and though I wanted answers, I saw she wasn't fit to talk. I helped her inside, barely able to stand the odor that trailed her. She collapsed onto the bed with a sigh, almost asleep before I could settle her down. Standing there, a storm of thoughts and fury battled inside me as I left the room, leaving behind a silence that now felt heavy and foreboding. I needed answers. I grabbed Andrea's unlocked phone from the counter, knowing well that she never bothered with passwords. My fingers trembled as I sifted through her messages and social media, and that's when I found them. Explicit texts from a man named Juan filled with coarse, sexual propositions and her eager, unsettling replies. Sleep eluded me that night as I lay in the guest room, unable to shake the repugnant images from my mind. My fists clenched under the covers. I imagined her in that unfamiliar dress, reeking of someone else's scent. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I held back in a bid to keep control. Morning arrived with reluctant clarity. I forced myself through the daily routine, showering, shaving, and dressing for work as if nothing abnormal had occurred, because I could not let her manipulate me. In the kitchen, as I prepared my morning coffee, Andrea entered, strangely calm and impeccably composed after the debauchery of the previous night. "Hey, honey, make me a coffee," she said in a tone so smooth it bordered on amusement. I slowly set down my mug, my eyes locking with hers in a cold stare. "Why don't you call Juan and have him make you a coffee?" I replied, my tone measured and calm. For a long, painful moment, she froze. Then a slow, knowing smile curled her lips. "So, you know," she murmured as she tilted her head just slightly. "Did you check my phone?" she asked softly. I didn't need to respond. Her silence confirmed everything. With a sigh, as if she were bored, she continued, "You know, if I call him here, you won't be here." She rested her chin on her hand, her voice deceptively playful. "So treat me right like you have, and I'll continue to be nice to you. Otherwise, my love, life will become hell." I let out a soft laugh, bitter and resigned. "My dear wife, you think a puny accountant is your plaything? I'm heading to the office at once. I'll be back by 5. By then, pack your bags and be gone. Is that clear?" Her eyes darkened, and the brief trace of amusement vanished as she forced a smile. "So it's going to be this way," she whispered. I held her gaze, locked in an unyielding stare. "Yes, it will be." The day at work dragged on, and despite my best efforts to focus on numbers and accounts, I couldn't escape thoughts of Andrea's smug smile and the sneer in her eyes as if I were a fool. My colleague Mateo, one of the few people I trusted, noticed my inner turmoil and pulled me aside just before lunch. "Diego, let's grab a smoke," he said quietly. I hesitated but then joined him outside, hoping the midday sun and fresh air might clear my troubled mind. Leaning against a wall, Mateo exhaled a cloud of smoke and asked, "You look beat, man. What's going on?" I swallowed hard and muttered, "It's Andrea. I know she's cheating on me." Mateo's eyes narrowed. "You sure?" he asked. I let out a bitter laugh and nodded. "I saw the text myself, from a guy named Juan." Mateo shook his head. "Damn, that's rough." Flicking his cigarette away, he assured me, "Don't worry, Diego. I'll see what I can do." I couldn't press him further. I wasn't even sure I wanted to understand the depths of what he meant. I trudged through the rest of the workday with my thoughts as heavy as lead. When 5 o'clock finally struck, I grabbed my things and drove home with a heart pounding in anxious anticipation. Would Andrea be waiting, or had she already vanished with no trace of the woman I once knew? As I turned onto my street, I noticed an old rusted pickup truck parked in front of my house. My pulse picked up. I parked behind it and went inside cautiously. The moment I stepped through the door, a heavy blow to the back of my head sent pain coursing through my skull, and the world spun violently. I stumbled, trying to regain my balance, but a volley of punches rained down on me. Fists and feet struck relentlessly. I hit the floor hard, curling up to protect myself, but a boot smashed into my ribs, leaving me gasping. Another forceful hit blurred my vision before a mocking laugh echoed overhead. When I came to, my head pounded, and my limbs were bound to a chair with ropes biting into my skin. A gag was forced into my mouth, the flavor of rough cloth filling my senses. And then I saw her. Andrea stood before me with a self-assured smirk, nearly naked and wearing only a thread of fabric that scarcely covered her. Next to her, a man loomed, his muscular physique adorned with tattoos, and an arrogant glint in his dark eyes as he watched me struggle. Andrea laughed, tilting her head playfully. "Look who's awake," she cooed. "You took quite a beating, babe." I glared at her, my breathing ragged, as she shuffled toward me. A manicured hand rested on the man's chest as she whispered, "I told you, Diego. Be nice to me, and I'll be nice to you. By her side, she indicated the man. Meet Juan. I clenched my fists. Each rope bite reminded me of my powerlessness. Andrea's eyes twinkled with dark mischief as she leaned forward. Juan controls Colonia Centro and the surrounding areas, she explained, her voice dripping with cold assurance. He keeps everyone in line. She dropped her voice to a whisper, leaning so close that I could feel her breath. You know what that means, don't you? I said nothing, but deep inside I understood. She grinned as she straightened up. He's the head of Los Reyes de la Muerte, the kings of death, she continued, theatrically running her hand along Juan's muscular arm. And as I see it, this is your first lesson in humility. Juan snickered in a low rumble. Don't worry, you'll learn soon enough. Andrea's expression shifted, darkening as she continued in a chilling tone. I hope this demonstration makes it clear. You now belong to me. Slowly she reached up and removed the gag from my mouth, letting me gasp for air. I coughed as blood mixed with my words, but I maintained my silence. Then before I could muster a response, Andrea pressed her lips against mine, her taste a bitter blend of cheap alcohol and cruelty. I refused to react. Pulling back, she smirked and declared, Now for your second lesson. With deliberate slowness, she turned away, her hips swaying as she returned to Juan. Without hesitation, he grabbed her, their heated encounter unfolding right there as his hands explored her body. Their moans filled the room with a twisted symphony of pleasure. Over her shoulder, Andrea called out, Do you like what you see? But I remained mute, my face expressionless as an undertone of fury simmered beneath the surface. Frustrated by my silence, she turned back and struck me across the face with a sharp crack. Speak, you puny accountant, she hissed. I met her gaze, my eyes burning with quiet defiance, yet no words escaped me. Juan sneered, stepping closer and cracking his knuckles. Let's see how much fight you've got left, he taunted. One blow after another assaulted my gut and ribs until darkness overtook me once more. When I came to again, a searing cold replaced the beating pain. I found myself lying in an open pit, my body battered, skin raw with bruises and dried blood. Blinking against the dim light, I saw a folded piece of paper near my hand. I forced myself to sit, trembling as I unfolded the note. Dear husband, if you make it out alive, come home and make me a coffee. Hope you learned your lesson. Andrea's words burned through me, igniting a slow, cold rage amidst the pain. Clenching the note, I surveyed the unsteady pit, then began clawing my way out, every movement a reminder of the cruelty inflicted. Outside, the humid night sky loomed vast and dark. My body bled with every ragged breath, but I barely registered the stares of passers-by as I embarked on a single burning purpose, to reach my boss's home. The rugged dirt road under my bare feet stung with each step, blood mixing with sweat and grime. When I finally reached the imposing gates of my employer's mansion, the guards, upon seeing my shattered state, silently helped me in. Within minutes, shocking whispers spread as I entered the opulent marble hall. The air heavy with the aroma of expensive cigars and aged whiskey, the bright chandeliers shining down on a scene that made my presence as naked, bloodied, and broken almost impossible to ignore. A stunned maid shrieked, and soon the commotion drew my boss himself, striding down the grand staircase. He stopped before me, his gaze steady and unreadable as he took in my disheveled state. Without asking for details, he simply said in a low, measured voice, Name. I drew a slow breath and answered despite the dull pain and throbbing ribs. With a barely perceptible change in expression, he mused. Juana said, Los Reyes de la Muerte. Recognition flashed in his eyes, a dangerous, chilling understanding that hung in the air. He then addressed his men without missing a beat. Get him a doctor. They quickly brought me into a pristine bathroom fitted with gold fixtures and a wide, rain-like shower. As hot water cascaded over me, washing away the filth and blood, pain flared along every wound, yet a numb resolve took hold. After a brief examination, the doctor advised rest and handed me pills for the pain, a small mercy amid a day of unbearable misery. A few hours of hazy recovery passed before my boss returned, a man who commanded silence with a mere look. He took a seat by my bed and, after a long silence, asked coolly in Spanish, ¿Qué tipo de muerte? In broken response, I murmured, Lento y doloroso, slow and painful. His low chuckle and a simple nod. Good, said a grim tone. Without waiting for more from me, he rose, adjusted his cuff, and assured, Rest up, I will set the stage for you. And with that, he left me alone with my rising thoughts of a life ruined. The next day, I dragged myself back to a fragile normalcy. My body ached with every breath and every movement. Yet I pushed forward, haunted by Andrea's last final warning. That evening, back at our once shared house, Andrea was alone when Juan arrived. He slipped inside with an air of forced confidence, yet his eyes betrayed an inner unease. Andrea lounged on the couch, nonchalantly raising an eyebrow at his arrival. What's with you? He demanded. Running a hand through his hair and exhaling sharply, he blurted, Something's wrong. A big cartel boss has put a hit on my men. Some of my boys have quit or been killed. It's like someone's out to get me. Andrea slowly sat up, frowning as she listened. So, what does that mean? She questioned. Juan's jaw tightened as he replied, It means we need to lay low for a while. Then turning toward her with a piercing stare, he queried, Has your husband come back? With a dismissive laugh, she retorted, Oh, please, I bet he ran home to mommy. He's nothing but a puny accountant. Juan's face darkened at her words. And what does he do again? He asked. Something with accounting. He once mentioned his boss was a guy named Misa. She shrugged vaguely. Juan's expression shifted as he repeated the name. Mesa? Is he a cartel boss? Andrea scoffed. How should I know? I never met him. A thick silence hung in the air, and for the first time, genuine fear seemed to make its presence felt. Nah, Andrea continued dismissively. My husband is nothing. He'd crumble at the slightest hint of real danger. But then a piercing screech from outside shattered the moment. They rushed to the window and saw a pickup truck's taillights vanish into the night. Juan tensed immediately. Grabbing his pistol, he barked, Hey, where the hell are my men? Silence answered him. A cold dread crawled up his spine as he stepped outside. His hands trembled around the door handle of his truck. With a sudden, horrific thud, two objects spilled from the truck. Juan recoiled in numb disbelief. Two severed heads lay on the dirt, eyes dry and forever vacant, left behind like a gruesome memento. Juan's face went pale as he retreated back inside, slamming the door with a shock that matched the terror in his eyes. Grab whatever you can. We need to leave. Now. His tone brooked no debate. Andrea's protest was muffled as Juan's grip on her wrist quelled any objections. In what felt like seconds, Andrea gathered a small bag with clothes, valuables, and cash while her trembling hands betrayed her inner fear. They bolted out the door, Juan clutching his pistol tightly as he scanned the darkness. The severed heads remained in sight, a morbid reminder of betrayal as the truck roared to life. As they sped away, Andrea, clutching her bag to her chest, trembled. Do something, I'm trying, she pleaded. Juan, with a frustrated shout, swerved onto a side road. The truck jolted over rough terrain, yet their pursuers, a pair of black SUVs with headlights glaring like predatory eyes, remained in relentless pursuit. Then, without any warning, blinding headlights appeared from the side. A massive truck rammed into them from the left with a terrible crunch, throwing their vehicle into a violent roll with shattering glass and a scream cut off abruptly by the impact. When the wreck finally stilled, Juan groaned as he dragged a disoriented Andrea from the twisted metal. But as they tried to stand, figures emerged from the darkness, men in black, masked by stoic expressions and armed to the teeth. Before Juan could even reach for his pistol, a heavy blow from a rifle butt sent him crashing to his knees, blood trickling from his shattered lip. Andrea shrieked in terror as rough hands yanked her back. No, let me go, she screamed, thrashing wildly in desperate protest, but the assailants held firm. Juan, spitting blood, glared at the shadowy figures. Who the hell are you? He demanded. No answer came. They were roughly dragged towards a waiting SUV, bound tightly with zip ties and having their faces obscured by large black bags. The doors slammed shut and the vehicle sped off into the night. After a brief, horrifying interlude, Andrea and Juan were thrown out of the SUV onto a cold, hard surface in an open courtyard. Lantern-like lights revealed them bound, naked, bruised, and terrified. Then, a man in a pristine white suit emerged. Elegant, yet out of place in the grim surroundings, he smiled coolly and said, Welcome. I was waiting for you. Andrea shuddered as he carefully helped her to stand. "You must be Andrea, Diego's wife?" he asked with smooth precision, his tone almost amused. Turning to Juan, he lowered his voice. "Do you have any idea who Diego is?" Juan, pale and trembling, offered no answer. The man chuckled softly. "He is the most important man to me," he explained steadily, eyes hardening as he added, "Diego is my accountant. He keeps my investments, my risks, and my enemies in check." A flicker of something sinister crossed his face. "And do you know what happens when someone disturbs that balance?" Juan's breathing grew ragged with fear. "My name is Santiago Meza Lopez," the man declared casually, letting the name hang between us. His tone carried a well-practiced cruelty. "I love making soup," he added darkly, a remark that underscored the gravity of the moment. Juan dropped to his knees, pleading softly, "Please forgive me. I made a mistake." Andrea turned towards him, her confusion deepening, and then, when she looked back, the sight of Diego, standing with a slight limp and bearing the fresh marks of yesterday's beating, made her stomach churn with dread. Gone was the familiar warmth of the man she'd known. In his place was a cold, unrecognizable figure. Santiago continued, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "I trusted Diego with my books so much that I asked him to handle all my accounts, and he did not disappoint." Andrea's eyes searched his face for a trace of the man she once loved, but found nothing. Santiago's demeanor grew more amused and dangerous as he produced a small knife from his jacket and slid it into Diego's pocket. "I'm giving you back something you once handed to me." The knife, gleaming ominously in the low light, seemed to promise retribution. Andrea's voice caught in her throat as Diego drew it out with a practiced ease. In one swift, chilling motion, the blade cut through the air, and what happened next defied human understanding. Juan's gut-wrenching screams filled the silence as Diego's precise strike left him writhing on the ground, his features contorted in pain. Diego then dropped the detached, bloodied remnants of Juan's face near Andrea's feet. Frozen in horror, Andrea could do nothing but watch as the image of betrayal was etched into her memory. Then came a low, mechanical growl, the roar of a chainsaw. The sound seemed to freeze time as the terrible machine descended on Andrea. The sickening crunch, the spray of crimson, and the gruesome dismemberment played out before my eyes. Every moment, every second was etched in my mind as the chainsaw sliced mercilessly through flesh and bone, leaving nothing but shredded remnants in its wake. For those of you tuning in, if you're finding this story as gripping and unnerving as I am, consider subscribing to our channel and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more stories like these, told with raw intensity and honest emotion. I stepped forward, gripping the chainsaw tighter, and with a final, unfeeling resolve, I ended the nightmare. In under 5 minutes, the bodies of Juan and Andrea were reduced to nothing more than dismembered scraps that were quickly dumped into a shallow grave by two of Lopez's silent, efficient men. In what seemed like a cruel erasure of betrayal, the ground was covered, leaving no visible trace of their existence. Santiago Meza Lopez stepped beside me, lighting a cigarette with a steady calm. "I'll give you a few minutes to mourn," he said evenly, "but then we return to our world." The air was thick with the scent of blood and freshly turned earth as I knelt over the uneven grave where Andrea lay. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a single deep red rose, the color almost unnaturally vivid, echoing the violence and blood spilled. "I gave you a path to walk away," I murmured bitterly, "but you chose hell." My fingers grazed the knife, still warm from the act. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, only the hollow, cold emptiness I had grown used to. I turned on my heel and returned to the waiting SUV, where Lopez's men watched in silent, uneasy respect. Opening the door, I settled into the leather seat as the engine growled to life. With a final glance at the grave, the figure of betrayal and ruined love vanished behind us into the night. Thus ended one of the darkest chapters of my life, a story of love turned to treachery, of violence and betrayal that left nothing untouched. While the echoes of that night still haunt me, I keep moving forward in a world that has grown remarkably callous to pain. Thank you for listening to this harrowing tale. If you feel moved by the story, if you think it deserves more voices, more discussion, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Your reactions drive us to continue exploring these dark and complex narratives. And so I drive onward, the memory of betrayal mingling with the cold emptiness of survival. The sun may yet rise over a changed horizon, but the scars remain. A reminder that some lessons in life are written in blood and regret.